you can go ahead.
Okay.
Looks like everybody's here.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for attending this Hawaii Hemp Task Force meeting. And the agenda for today's meeting are as follows. So first, we'll have our hemp consultant to talk about the findings from you based on the survey that you filled out, and also the feedback that they gathered from you. So we'll have a 20 minutes for that. And after Char and Megan, we will be having Q&A. So then after that, we will be having engagement with our, we invited our narcotics enforcement from the narcotics enforcement division. So we invited Mike. So he will be talking about, will be in terms of the streamlining and the definitions for hemp. Then we will be moving on to grain food sector. Grant Overton will be speaking on this sector. Also for the fuel sector, it will be followed by Scotty Wong for the general fiber. Then we'll have Joe Smith for the building sector. And then lastly, we have Jodiah McRoberts for the cannabinoid sector. So we'll have, after the speaker, we will have time for you to ask your questions or raise your comments, give your comments. Then after that, for overflow questions, we have the general questions and answer session. And then lastly, we'll talk about the next step and the next meeting and also the presentation. Thank you. So I will give this to Char and Megan.
So let me just start by saying that we understand, I spent about 20 plus years as a small farmer in the Midwest. I have a degree in agronomy, and I certainly understand the difficulties of being a small farmer in anybody's state and the frustrations with that. And I just want you all to know that we are on your side. We're trying to help bridge the gap so that the state can help you. We're not against you, but we also do have to look into fiber type industrial hemp as well as the cannabinoids. So, and Megan has done an amazing job of listening to everybody and taking everybody's feedback, and we will continue to do that for the rest of this time. So, okay, Megan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Villa, and I'm working with Char as a consultant for the Hawaii Hemp Task Force. I prepared a mini presentation that I'm going to go through. It'll take about 10 minutes. And so let me just share my screen really quick. Make sure that we go. Can everybody see this? Good.
Yep.
So first, I just wanted to talk about what the goal of this task force is. The goal of the Hawaii Hemp Task Force is to gather data and information to understand industry needs and inform strategies and actions that support agriculture and a robust hemp industry in the state. And this is all coming from Act 263. We're going by this act, kind of went through the whole thing. We've highlighted everything. And this report is based off of what's in this act. This is a brief outline of what's going to be in the report. This is what we were tasked to do. There's a little bit more in-depth that comes under this, but as a whole, this is kind of what we've been tasked to look into. Infrastructure needs of Hawaii hemp farmers, recommended infrastructure by island, schematic diagram showing the various processing steps and infrastructure needed, approximate costs, infrastructure sizing and capacity options, mobile versus fixed infrastructure, volume and mass requirements for processing per day. So all of the ones in white, we've done most of this already. We just need to tighten up those sections, but we have most of this. We do need to add in a little bit more on the cannabinoid side for the processing needs, but that will be in there. And then the ones in blue, these are ones that still are works in process. So the economic implications of the recommended infrastructure by island, strategies and actions needed to spur the development of a competitive hemp industry. Task force recommendations by sector. This is where I've been talking to most of you, and I'm compiling all of that information. I'm looking for themes that, you know, multiple people are saying. So that will all be in this section. And then the last section is finding and recommendations, including any proposed legislation. So this is what's going to be in the report. We're probably 85% done with it, I would say. We just need to tighten up some of the sections, and then these ones in blue, a lot of this is coming from you guys. So this is us compiling kind of what your needs and recommendations are. So just so you understand that what this report is about. Yeah, why am I not able to? Hold on. Okay. So this is now going into some of the feedback. I broke it up by sector, and this is not every single thing that you guys have told us. I just kind of took some of the top level things that were ongoing themes that I put in this presentation, but just know that there'll be a more in-depth deep dive into this in the actual report. So we're going to start with the grain, food, and general fiber sector. Some of the feedback and recommendations for this was needing money and grants. Also, what kind of grants are out there for hemp? The next one was mentioned also on the cannabinoid side. I guess the USDA used to do a call every week where they bring in different experts and talk about hemp regulations at the federal level. They'd like to see something similar at the state level. So that everyone kind of knows what the regulations are. So ideally, maybe it's once a month call with the DOH, once a month call with the DOA, and then potentially also with the USDA, just so everyone can communicate with each other and talk about any questions they have. Another ask was needing some decorticators and tractors and farming and processing equipment. To start, it can be smaller mobile ones because we don't really have much of an industrial hemp industry yet. So there's not big farms that are growing. So looking into having some smaller mobile decorticators and some equipment that can be available. The fuel sector. Year over year, bills are passed that are farmer and producer friendly, and then they overregulate, and there continues to be a moving goalpost. A bill gets passed that the hemp industry is happy with, and then the next year the legislation gets amended, but that uncertainty diminishes their ability to raise money. This was mentioned in several other sectors as well, that a bill will get passed, and then, you know, the hemp industry is happy with it, but then the following year it gets amended or changed, which makes it so there's a lot of uncertainty, which can affect a lot of aspects of their business, including raising capital for these businesses. They're wanting to see the federal law apply to let the certainty of capitalism occur so the goalposts don't keep moving. An example that was said was that Kamehameha Schools is unable to license land for industrial hemp to lease because of the uncertainty that surrounds the industry. Some of the large landowners don't want to take that risk. And then some banking issues. For banking, you have to sign something saying you aren't dealing in cannabis. And also that a lot of the local banks aren't really familiar with what the federal standards are surrounding hemp. And so a lot of the banks are turning down a lot of these businesses. Into the building sector. Obviously, like growing hemp here will help us build utilizing hempcrete. The house that was just built up in Kula by Joe Smith, he spent about $15,000 just on shipping costs alone to get the herd here. So those shipping expenses would be taken out, which would be great. It's still uncertain if the cost of the houses will be cheaper if it's grown here. But that's why we need to get an industry going so that we can really start getting data and understanding the cost to build these hempcrete homes. Some people are a little nervous about unconventional things. You know, everybody asks how much more expensive hempcrete is. And so just education is really important when you're talking about hempcrete homes, because people don't really know what it is. And, you know, a lot of people think it's load bearing or all these different things. So education is a big part of the hempcrete industry. We don't have anyone growing industrial hemp at a large scale yet. We need to get that going in order to create a local hempcrete industry here so that we can get homes built quickly. And then I also just wanted to let you all know that an article just came out in the Maui News last week about the house that was just completed up in Kula. There's a lot of great information in that article. and that we need more of this kind of information to get out to the public so that they understand what hemp is, the different uses for it. And this was a great step in the right direction for the hempcrete building industry. The cannabinoid sector. This is a little bit lengthier because a lot of the farmers that are part of the task force are in that sector. So we had a lot more feedback that came from here. So I'll kind of try to get through this quickly. The state of Hawaii has made it very difficult for hemp farmers to do business here. They have some of the strictest regulations in the country, and it's hindering the growth of the industry. And also that the testing requirements are unrealistic. Some feedback was HB 1359 passed in May of 2023, but they still don't have the final rules. They want clarity on everything, so everything's clear. They feel like hemp is the lowest priority to cannabis and agriculture, other agricultural endeavors. There were other cannabis things that passed and they got all the rules, but the hemp industry is still waiting. They would just really like to have a better roadmap and direction. They also said they haven't been able to operate under the new bills. They've lost investment every year because the hemp industry has never been allowed to be stable. It's always under assault for new bills and the goalposts keep moving. This was mentioned in another sector as well. Another thing that a lot of them were saying is that it's impossible to compete with the low-cost hemp products sold at gas stations and kiosks. The regulators need to target the sale of non-compliant hemp products. The local hemp industry is suffering due to out-of-state competition that's not being regulated the same as local hemp. There are many out-of-state companies that are selling gummies and other edibles, while local hemp farmers cannot make or sell these products. But there's no enforcement of the illegal actors. The rules seem to only apply to Hawaii residents, and there's a lack of oversight on the bad players and out-of-state players. Now onto some recommendations that the cannabinoid sector had. There should be some hubs on each island where they've got different machines that can be used free of charge for the farmers. Things like mobile decorticators, farming and harvesting equipment. It had been suggested that they could be done through the UH campuses or through local food hubs, similar to what the Maui Food Technology Center does. Cannabinoid processors could also be potentially set up at these hubs for the farmers to utilize. The hubs could also help provide education and job pipelines. Hawaii Farmers Union could be a great partner. On every island, they've got the ability to interface with other farming organizations. So it'd be just great to have these hubs that has a tool library for the small farmers to access, so they don't have to outlay so much money on that kind of stuff. Another thing that came up many, many times in conversations, the hemp farmers do not want to be lumped in with the cannabis industry. They said that this has happened in other states and has resulted in the loss of banking and insurance for the farmers due to the commingling of cannabis and hemp. They also don't want to separate cannabinoids from industrial hemp. This I said earlier, but again, they'd like to try to have more conversations with the DOH, DOA, USDA, so that they can voice their concerns and not wait until it gets to legislation and then see that things are changing. They want to have conversations, be able to ask questions and all that kind of stuff. So that was many, many people kind of brought that up on our feedback phone calls. Again, grants for local farmers, infrastructure, research and development. This is kind of across the board for every sector. I thought this was a great idea too. Have the state adopt a seal made with 100% Hawaii grown hemp. Companies can apply to get the seal, and then brands can charge a premium for their products. The DOH could have a list on their website with all of the 100% grown in Hawaii products. Now I just want to open it up. Any questions and feedback that anyone might have regarding any of that stuff that we talked about?
I have one question.
Okay.
You say the farmers don't want to separate industrial hemp?
Some of them have said that, yes.
What's the reason for that?
If anyone wants to chime in on that.
I can speak to that, Meg, if you like.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Gail Byrne-Baber, President of Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association. I think we need to recognize that hemp and CBD are a valuable crop for food security and farmers in general here. When we start isolating it out and lumping it with medical marijuana, it tends to lose its agricultural value. So certainly, I know our farmers, our association has put forth the need to provide a flat out exemption for anything that's not CBD. There should be none of these regulations, but part of that is to continue to recognize that the hemp plant, including growing for cannabinoids, is similar to like growing for lion's mane's mushrooms or creating value-added products like kombucha. It's kind of been maligned a lot because of imports.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any feedback or want to speak to any of the things that I spoke about?
Can you hear me? This is Greg Smith.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. I'm on my phone, so that's a little tricky. And I'm at the farmer's market, so it's a little loud here. Yeah, I'm interested. I've had conversations with a couple of large landowners in Kau, the Olson Trust organization, and Mrs. Lee, who owns a lot of land in Punaluu and Nalalehu. And they're both very interested in growing hemp. And they would be willing to really donate land and equipment and other things to try to get a crop growing. But they really want to know what the state's going to do to help them, because, you know, the cost of labor to even do that is pretty high. And when you don't have a place to sell it, then it really is kind of difficult. But we've got to grow it before we do anything else, is to prove we can do a 20-acre grow or a 10-acre grow and be profitable. And so these people have shown interest. It's just a matter of if we can get some kind of infrastructure and sort of help trying to figure out how we can get them on board. I mean, Mrs. Lee has an incredible growing operation up above Nalalehu, and she has probably close to $1 million worth of tractor equipment and farm equipment that's hardly being used. So they're very open to starting something with hemp. It's just they don't know where to go and they don't know how to grow it. And there's not a lot of farmers on the islands that really understand how to grow this crop on scale. In fact, I don't think there's been very many truly scale operations. So I think that that's probably the most important thing that we can do, is create a large scale growing operation and getting the funding we need to make that happen. Over and above everything else, all the rules and regulations won't make any difference if we can't prove that we can grow this stuff on scale. So that's my input.
Yeah, I agree. And I think education and bringing in experts is a big part of this, to help farmers understand how to grow it. And then also getting some support from the state, maybe with some subsidies, grants, all that kind of stuff. Because that was another thing that I actually didn't put on there, but it will be in the report, is labor costs. A lot of people did mention the high cost of labor. So maybe there's ways that the government could help subsidize that for the first couple years, just to get the industry going. But I think those are all very valid. That's some very valid feedback. Does anybody else have any feedback on anything? Or want to reiterate anything that I said, or?
Yeah, hi, Meg, it's Gail again. I just, excuse me, because I'm in Oahu trying to care for a daughter who went through surgery yesterday, so I'm multitasking. So sorry about the noise, the background, everything else. But just want to emphasize that I know most folks in the hemp industry are really looking for the opportunity for ongoing conversations with the regulatory agencies. So I know you highlighted that in your report. I think together we could move this industry forward, but our conversations obviously have been limited around legislative time. So I'm hopeful. That was actually the intent of the task force, as you know, just to reiterate what I said last time. We were hoping we'd have 8 months of interactive conversations amongst ourselves and with agency people. It's not going to happen because of the time constraint. So, and hopefully that'll be noted in the report as well, that with all good intention, we didn't quite meet the intentions, but it's so critical. It's so critical to have a successful agricultural sector that everyone's talking to. So thank you.
And I would want to thank you very much. I think what Gail just said is really important, and I was really impressed with your summary, Megan. Thank you. I think that was a good summary of a lot of the points. I To answer Joe's question, earlier today I was working with UH Ag Connect on an internship program. They're looking at the feasibility of different crops, and the labor is the big thing because all my production is incredibly low cost, and I know how to grow large scale hemp, but just the minimum labor is really expensive. So the reason I am most passionate about hemp as food and also housing, but also the CB hemp is the one that can get the most money, and then the herd is the byproduct of the flower CB hemp. So other places they're harvesting it for the fiber, not really the fiber, but mostly the flower and a little bit for the grain in Canada. And the herd is a byproduct. There's a new farm bill coming up, and currently there is alternative sampling protocols where if I grew that was obviously for hempcrete and didn't go to flower, it might not have to be tested. So I guess that would be one advantage of being separate. But if it had flower, it would be so much more profitable. So it has to be profitable for the farms. So I think that's why it's good to not separate it too much, because it's the same crop that can be used for the hempcrete, and also the most lucrative at this point is still the flower. But the hemp is such a big topic, but this was a great summary of our limited conversations, but I would definitely second the idea of having more conversations, because one of the biggest things I think is we've been double regulated for so long, and all the other states, it has the USDA regulation, doesn't have the DOA regulation. And the movement reports stopped me from selling microgreens, and the attorney general said that they were ready to get rid of the movement reports, and they said not many people were even filing the movement reports. So that in that buffer zone, which there's no buffer zone for medicinal cannabis, and there's only one pretty much trouble neighborhood where people are living in an agricultural area and complaining, but that operation is grandfathered in. So the 100-foot buffer zone from any dwelling whatsoever still puts out a lot of agricultural land out of production. And if those are the two things that the Department of Ag Hawaii regulates, if they didn't regulate that anymore, the staff could be completely just devoted to helping the hemp farmers and educating other government agents, and working on getting us the highest price like other state ag departments. They just work just to help the farmer. If we got rid of the buffer zone and the movement, then the state ag could just focus on helping the farmers. also the HDOH, the $800 application fee and the potential $10,000 fine, and kind of seems like there's not really a pro cannabis I guess theory at the HDOH. So if those two organizations would help farmers more, we can definitely grow. But the overburden that Hawaii put on the farmers made us kind of miss out on the boom. So we really need like reparations from the state. And I appreciate all your help.
Hi, this is Brittany Neal. I would like to just add to what Robert just said as far as, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to, I guess, emphasize that the fact that we are even required to do transportation or movement reports just shows that we are not truly being treated like any other agricultural commodity. We're still kind of being lumped into that controlled substance arena. And so I think that the movement reports just really need to be done away with, because again, banana farmers, papaya farmers, they don't have to go through the additional burden of filing these movement reports to move their agricultural crops. And so again, I think that that's important. And just going back again and again to hemp is intended by the federal government to be treated as agricultural commodity, not as a controlled substance. And we need to stop over-regulating it at the state level.
Hi, this is Liam from the Office of Medical Cannabis Control and Regulation. If I can just jump in, our permit fees for hemp processors is $500. And if you're processing hemp for cannabinoids, you need to fill out a permit application with us, and it's only $500. I just want to bring that to light. So thank you.
Liam, are you saying that the processing permit now for cannabinoids is 2,500? Is that what you said? I'm so sorry. I'm in a little bit of a noisy place.
I would love that, but no, I said 500, Gail. So,
Oh,
but no,
no, you wouldn't.
we could change that. So, no, just 500. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's annual, and that kind of I understand that seems nominal, especially given the state's expenses. But you look at the cost testing and processing, and then you look at the fact that Hawaii has the highest cost of farming in the world. Doesn't matter what it is across the board, we do. It's just really hard to compete. And I think that's one of the reasons we're really asking for some legislative stability, because we've already given multiple examples of why this legislative instability has impacted all. It's impacted my farm in terms of investment. It's impacted a really important grow and project on Oahu, all of us. And so I think we're all very fearful that we're facing another marijuana bill this next year, and it probably won't get heads up again this year. I hope that wouldn't be the case if that's the plan. But we're just begging for some stability here. Let us stand up HB 1359 and Act 263 for 3 to 5 years. If they want to get the REC program up and going, great. And then maybe we can be added later if it really makes sense. But we know we're going to be impacted if we're if there's another legislative move. And we also know that we will lose business services. Doesn't matter how much people assure us, because it's happened in other states. And our sources are people that collect data, not the policymakers themselves that don't collect data on their own policies. So I'd just like to highlight that the stability is so important, because the economic factors that everyone just talked about. I mean, everyone can just cry you a story right now on how much money we've lost. Why are we even doing this, right? Still, I think is one of the questions one of the consultants asked. But thanks for letting me underscore the need for stability related to economics.
Yep, and just one last thing. So if you are processing hemp for cannabinoids, you do need to fill out a permit with the Department of Health if you are processing anything. And that's part of the Act 263. And that's something that was pushed for by the industry.
Yeah.
And if you are talking or processing anything, if you are promoting cannabinoid hemp products, you really need to fill that out and have a permit from our Department of Health.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Now we're gonna move on to Mike, who is, let me just make sure I get your title right, Mike. He is from the, he's the detective lieutenant from Narcotics Enforcement Division. He's just gonna talk quickly about some definitions. And then after that, we're gonna hop into the sectors. And I know Grant has to get off at 1 p.m. And he's gonna be speaking about fuel and grain, I think. So we'll send it to Mike right now to speak.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will try to be very brief, get you guys back on on your schedule. I just wanted to come on. We're, as part of the requirement of the legislative act, we're required to be involved, mostly because of many definitions of hemp that are found throughout the Hawaii Revised Statutes. Our office, as well as the county police departments, don't really have any enforcement when it comes to hemp. However, if it's obviously doesn't meet the legal requirements for hemp and it becomes marijuana, then it falls into our laps as a controlled substance. And then just a few quick things. Pretty much all of the definitions in HRS go back for marijuana to one of two places, either 329-1, which is our Controlled Substance Act, or into 712-1240, which has to do with the more illicit drug, dangerous, detrimental, and harmful drugs. But really, they have the same definition for marijuana, and it recently was amended so that it does exclude hemp products as long as certain requirements are met. And that's, obviously, so hemp that's in possession, custody, or control of somebody who has a permit from U.S. Department of Agriculture, hemp that's in possession of a person authorized to process hemp by the state. Those are exempt from any kind of from the marijuana definition. And product containing or derived from hemp, but those do not include living hemp plants, viable seeds, leaf material, or floral material. So one of the things that we see quite often, I know somebody had brought up about enforcement of gummies and et cetera. A lot of that still falls under hemp law, and so it doesn't become controlled substance. However, the flower does, and we've had some enforcement action on hemp flower sales throughout the state. Law enforcement has taken some actions on those to try and clean that portion up. But yeah, so the marijuana and marijuana concentrate sections of Hawaii Revised Statutes entirely exempt hemp as a marijuana product. So I don't know, from any of your previous discussions, if there's some kind of a need to change that, or if there's something in that definition that doesn't work for you folks. But again, on the law enforcement side, things that are legally hemp, we really have no enforcement over. That would be in regulatory enforcement with either ag or health. And really, that's all I have, and I wanted to open up for questions.
This is Greg Smith, and I've been involved with growing hemp here in Hawaii for quite a while. And I don't know if law enforcement realizes how incredibly difficult it is to grow a hemp for cannabinoid with the 0.3% as a guideline. And that is one of the biggest issues here is if a farmer has to grow a plant that stays under 0.3%, then its THC or its CBD levels are going to be around 6-7%. That's not enough for anybody to want to process it. So we're in a catch-22 as a grower when the real issue should always be in what the consumer takes. So if it's being made into a tincture or a salve or a gummy bear, that's where the testing needs to be done. It's not on the farmer's level. I mean, it's just impossible to live under 0.3, and yet we have tried it. I've had successful grows under 0.3, but most of them were hot, and I've had to destroy them. So, I've been involved in it for quite a while and lost quite a bit of money doing this. And that has been a real burden on the farmer.
I can appreciate that, sir. Unfortunately, that's something that legislation would have to change, both federally and state legislation. We don't create the laws. So while I can understand that, and I'm pretty familiar with the hemp program dating back to when it was kind of first a pilot program done by Department of Agriculture. We worked with them quite a bit, and I know that most of the crop that was growing during that time did not stay within the 0.3 THC and was destroyed. So I can understand fully what you're saying, but unfortunately, that's not something that law enforcement can change. That has to be legislative.
Yeah, the strain Yuma, which was one of the first ones they brought in from China, which was brought in to be grown for fiber and for seed, it was hot. It was like 0.5%, and then they had to destroy all of that. So, I mean, that's just an example of what we're up against.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that entirely, sir. I just, unfortunately, I'm not the one that can change that. We are reactive to legislation, so.
Yeah, and I'm sort of bringing this up to the whole group because this is an issue that needs to be dealt with.
Hi. Who's accepting the avocado? Avo? Only 10 pounds?
Does anyone else have any more questions for Mike?
Yes, this is Brittany Neal again. I have one question. You know, I appreciate you taking the time, Mike, to be a part of this conversation. I think that having open dialogue between hemp farmers and NED is really important because all of us are, you know, trying to make sure that we're law abiding, you know, but there are some areas that there is a certain amount of uncertainty or kind of gray areas that exist. And so I'm curious to find out what the NED's position is on a hemp crop that is, you know, grown completely legally. It meets the 0.3% THC threshold, or it's lower than that. And then once the crop is harvested and processed, anything that is concentrated obviously would go from being less than 0.3% to temporarily above 0.3%. And then once it's made into products, back down to 0.3%. So is that anything that NED is concerning itself with as far as the regulation, or does that entirely fall under the Department of Health because they're the ones regulating the processing? And just kind of what is the NED's position on that? Because it is from a completely federally legal hemp crop, and it is just part of the logical progression of processing that crop.
Yeah, so that is something that we would not really be concerned with if that remains in that processing in that process. So within the whole processing start to finish kind of thing, you know, from when you get the plant until it's a product that's ready for sale. Kind of what happens there, as long as it stays within that legal processor, it's not something that we're going to really concern ourselves with.
So then as far as making sure that it's very clearly in process, would it be sufficient to have documentation of the test results of the compliant crop, have a valid registration with the Department of Health as a processor, and then to have that material labeled as in process? Or how can a hemp farmer protect themselves, or a hemp processor, in that kind of time period where it is in that form, as far as like the paper trail?
Yeah, the two things you said is probably the most important things, is the record of it testing as hemp prior to you receiving it, and then the fact that you are a licensed processor. So the way that the definition of marijuana is, it does exclude the processors or hemp that's in possession of a person that's authorized under state law to process. So as long as that remains in your possession, so at your processing site, under your control, basically, it's not something that's going out of the processing area with a higher THC or, testing with higher THC levels.
Yeah, Brittany, this is Greg Edwards with Department of Health. Since it sounds like a lot of this seems to be from the processing, cannabinoid processing side, where DOH would have the permit for that. So I'd echo what Mike said, sorry, that when it's in your permitted processing facility that you have a permit for, yeah, certainly the expectation is through extraction that it'll rise above 0.3 and no longer be hemp. But you're allowed as a processor to continue to move it through out of its intermediary steps and into its finished product form, dilute it down, whatever needs to be done to move it back down to 0.3 or below. And that's verified through, of course, the testing, the final product testing. Well, that's one of the requirements to get a DOH permit to be a cannabinoid hemp processor is the background check. And that's the reason why that background check is there for the processor. It's that through their manufacturing steps, there certainly can be times where through concentration, the biomass will move above, or the crude, if they have crude, the crude will move above 0.3 and into the marijuana space definition. So as long as you're not selling it at that point, moving it from your facility, and you're continuing on through its finished steps, you're fine. But that's where that background check element comes in to this permitted process with respect to DOH. Does that help a little bit?
It does. It does raise a couple additional questions just with regards to the terminology that you used as far as through the crude oil, taking the compliant flower material, processing it into crude oil. So is it your position that hemp then temporarily becomes marijuana and then is legal for the hemp processor to possess as long as they do not leave the facility or transfer it to another before it is then converted back into hemp? Or are we saying that this is hemp the whole time, it's just not legally able to be transferred when it's in this non-compliant form, but it is still not technically marijuana? I guess I'm getting confused on, is a hemp processor allowed to temporarily possess marijuana? Or is it just that this is hemp that is temporarily not compliant? And then does that also mean that the processor cannot sell crude oil to somebody else who is going to just be manufacturing that into products? Because again, that limits a certain hemp industry space of people who are just manufacturing products, but don't actually want to grow their own hemp to do so.
Yeah, excellent question. And there's a lot in there to kind of unpack real quick. And I know, Grant, you've got a time limit here. I'm going to try to make this quick. I'm sorry. I want to apologize for introducing crude oil to the conversation. It is allowed by law, crude oil. However, the law says rules have to be implemented before the crude oil as a separate commodity, as its own separate product, can move through the system. So we're working on those rules now. The rules will say that the crude that you make from biomass, that anyone makes from biomass, a processor, a permitted processor, has to be diluted back down below 0.3 or 0.3 or below and tested only for that before it could move, before you then can sell it to that manufacturer who needs to be permitted by the Department of Health, that can then take that diluted crude, because it has to move out of your facility as hemp, and 0.3 is that line in the sand, right? So then it moves on to step number 2, the manufacturer who isn't working with biomass any longer, they may choose to work with the crude and continue to filter, process, extract from the crude. The crude will, at that point, those intermediary products will drift above 0.3.
Is Connie the one in there?
Sorry. It's not DOH's position that we don't take the position that you're working with marijuana in this intermediary step if you're a permitted processor. The expectation is that, or the understanding is, in order to get to your finished product, the intermediary steps, the processing steps, the filtering steps, the concentration steps necessitate, by necessity, may end up that your product drifts above. So if any deer, and again, I don't want to speak for you, Mike, but if police were to go in there, if you have a permit to process, I don't think anyone is saying that you're allowed, you're breaking the law. If you were selling it at that form, at that state, and you were removing it from the property and doing something else with it, I think you kind of lose your protection from being a DOH hemp processor. And I just did air quotes and I realize I'm not on video, but you lose that protection, if you will, from being a DOH cannabinoid hemp processor once you remove that higher THC product. Does that help?
Hey, guys, Grant
Yes,
Overton here.
thank you.
I'm going to ask we move this to the cannabinoid section because I have a hard stop at 1. And although cannabinoids are vastly interested and I appreciate all of you working on it, it's one component of this conversation today. So I'm gonna do a double header here right now on food and fuel because
Yeah, so let's
we're
let
pressed on
Grant
time.
speak. We're gonna save the rest of the cannabinoid conversation for the very end. We know you guys have a lot, but also I want to make sure that everyone keeps in mind. I know we were just talking to Mike, so this pertained to him. But a lot of the goal of this task force is for infrastructure and all of that kind of stuff, not necessarily regulations and that. But I know that we had Mike on here, so that's why we addressed this here. But let's let Grant, he's gonna speak about the food and the fuel sectors, and then so that he can he has a hard stop at 1. So you can go ahead, Grant.
Thanks, Megan. So generally speaking, Agripelligo is my company, CEO and co-founder of that. I also said I'm the vice president of the Hemp Farmers Association. So for everybody that doesn't know me, that's the background. Largely unimportant for this conversation, but food as the major component is the current highest value chain coming out of industrial hemp in the United States and Canada, and vastly more accessible when you're talking about large scale acreage. Unfortunately, a lot of what the conversation today has been, it's been really good conversation. I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this. But we've been focusing on products, and a component of hemp is certainly how to monetize it. But the regulation that we've been working towards in the state and what the federal government has outlined pertains to cultivation of the crop. And it's pretty evidently clear what the lines drawn in the sand are at a federal scale for how you regulate different products. And so a lot of what is happening is cannabinoid products are in a variety of ways impacting other sectors. And I think there's a variety of reasons why that's occurring that you guys will get into. So for food, what we've seen in the state locally is that to be commercially viable, you're looking at hundreds to thousands of acres. It's similar to commodity grain. So for those with agronomy, horticultural, or botany backgrounds, this is very synonymous with something you see with wheat or corn or soya, where it's not actually viable to be producing this at low acreage. And the conundrum and why is that almost all of our farmers are smallholder farmers. And so aggregating these producers together and producing something akin to the model that we saw with Kona Coffee, and not a perfect model, I want to acknowledge that, that can make it possible for people with 5, 10, maybe 20 acres to actually participate in a commodity market. But without that, it's not possible. And so because of the lack of infrastructure, our focus in my company has been building up regenerative agro-ecosystems and biorefineries that can actually support a scaled operation, and doing this as a vertically integrated entity, because we do not have toll processing or availability of infrastructure like places in the Pacific Northwest and Canada. And so when you're looking at scales to this magnitude for grain, the equipment you need for it is going to be too expensive without that commitment of individual producers that are able to take down big projects in one swath. That's our current issue. The only way around that for food products is value-added goods. And I'm not talking about cannabinoid food products. That is an entirely different thing we should only consider under cannabinoids. I'm talking about taking grain and transferring it into a human consumable food. For our company, we worked on hemp-based milk as an alternative to something like soy milk, or regular dairy-based milk. and hemp-based protein powders, similar to something like whey protein. These products still need to be made in a quantity that requires sufficient acreage, or have to have what I'd define as an ultra boutique offtake, meaning you're selling direct to a very small number of shops that say the Four Seasons are going through a farm to table type concept. And I know Robert's done some work with that with microgreens, and that's certainly an interesting avenue. But for the average producer and the average farmer, value-added goods are not easy to accomplish. And so when we're looking at this, it's a commodity grain market, and that gets into the difficulties of securing acreage and securing financing. And similarly to this, the more challenging market, but the one with the larger climate and state impact, is the bioenergy market. And so when we've looked at this, we've been addressing production of renewable natural gas using anaerobic digestion, so something similar to what you'd see with fermentation for making beer, although we're not producing an alcohol, we're producing a biogas. And this product's basically a drop-in substitute for fossil-based fuels. And we're doing this in research capacities that produces a carbon negative fuel, something that takes in more CO2 than it emits during the process of the entire life cycle of the product. And this has immense value. We've demonstrated commercially it can be done. The hurdle we are coming into with working through hemp, and the issue that we are addressing with it now, hopefully this task force pushes us ahead, is that the state of Hawaii has been left in a realm of regulatory uncertainty, despite probably about 8 years now or so of work on passing legislation that enables us originally to utilize the pilot program, then transition the pilot program into full federal regulations, and then actually enact further industry growth beyond that point in 2020. What we've consistently seen, despite the best efforts that I think of everyone, including the legislators, I want to give everyone credit for the time they put into this, is, as Megan had put in the slides, though, a moving goalpost, and that year over year, new regulations are proposed, and the ones that were put up and actually passed in most cases the year prior are not given time to be implemented. And so this has created, again, a regulatory uncertainty that kills the investment ability for commodity-based farming systems. So if you want to make an impact on regenerative agriculture, you want to make an impact on local energy and food goals, and you want to make an impact on local job markets, agriculture needs to be scaled. With the current regulatory uncertainty, it is untenable for folks to be investing in hemp projects in Hawaii. So that's the conundrum. And all the science in the world, all the belief in the fantastic regenerative power of this crop, all the well-intentioned does nothing if there's not capital to support the development. And we're being hamstrung by a simple thing. And I think I sound like a broken record to those who have been involved on this. We need to do one thing more than anything in this state for this industry to flourish, and it's apply federal law, because we have not done that. We are again convoluting products produced from a crop with the crop itself. So I would encourage everyone to read through the Farm Bill. And I think one other point to point out is that I want to give Gail, Weber, and Greg and everyone else on HHFA immense credit for the bill we passed 2 years ago, which outlined with partnership work basically with Department of Health, a pathway forward towards something that could be tenable for farmers. The bill that was proposed this legislative session basically unraveled all that work, although it did fail. It threatened to do it, and the threat of that occurring is problematic. So I think we're all working towards the goal here, and I think getting alignments, as Gail said at the beginning of this call, longer form was the intent of this task force. That's what's needed to make this happen. And so I know we're not going to resolve it today, and we're pushed on time, so I do have to jump off in about a minute here. If anyone has any questions that we can't answer in the next minutes for me in particular, feel free to contact me by email. I'm happy to talk about it more. That's all I have for you guys today.
Does anyone want to ask Grant? He has 1 minute. Does anyone have any feedback on what he just said before he jumps off? Thank you, Grant. That was an amazing overview. I really appreciate it.
Grant, you've invested over $100,000, haven't you? You guys have your own research funds into this.
It's well over $1 million actually. But,
Oh, well, my goodness, a magnitude lower. Yeah, I think that needs to be understood, how much skin in the game many of us have here. So thank you. And what's at risk.
Thank you, Gail. I mean, the organization that we have, that should add this while we have a platform right now. If you're interested in hemp or growing it in the state, I strongly urge you guys to join Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association because it is the current forum for having these conversations. And Gail is doing a great job running it. Brittany's doing a great job running it. And we have been all working together to try to contribute to it. So yeah, a good area to maybe extend this task force into.
Hey, Grant, can you put your email in the chat before you leave?
You know, I'm on my phone right now. I can try to do it again, but I should be able to. Here we go. Yeah, I can get that over there. And I will be hopping off here in about 2 seconds. There you go.
We'll share a copy of this presentation and we can share his contact information so that you can reach out to him directly with any other questions.
Okay, thank you
so
guys.
much,
Please have a great rest of the conversation. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna, Scotty, are you on here? Scotty Wong?
I'm here.
Okay, so Scotty is gonna speak to general fiber sector, but he also has his hands in a couple other things. So just wanted him to kind of speak to what he's doing on the industrial hemp side, more on that side of things.
Hello, everybody. I am Scotty Wong. My partner is Scotty Reese Moniz. We both run Friends of Waimanalo, which is a nonprofit 501c3 workforce development organization, mainly focused on the building and trades. We originally started in youth build, construction, trades, and whatnot. But that's what led us to industrial hemp fiber for building materials back in 2019. And I am the CEO and operator of Ohanahui Ventures, which is the for-profit side of our agriculture venture. So we first was getting into hemp through hops to make beer, to provide hops for all the microbreweries in Hawaii. Then we found out about hemp. And our biggest thing when our first partners were seed cannabinoid farmers out of Oregon that came here to partner with us. We saw the writing on the wall where it's going to be very difficult to grow anything that you have to put in your mouth because of the Department of Health and what was going on at the time. So we, as building and trades people, went straight to the fiber. And when we got our 430-acre farm up in Wahiawa and Whitmore Village from the state ADC, the big thing with the state is push for food, growing food. And we said, yeah, hemp is food. But we did commit 40% of our farm to food grow, which is Polynesian vegetables and fruits, Asian vegetables and fruits. And we have probably one of the longest, biggest fruit orchards that's been growing for 25 years up there from one of the neighbors that jumped the fence onto state land and started growing, which we adopted because he passed away. On our hemp side, we're currently growing 4 acres of a plot for hemp, which is for our test seed crop, because we're partnered. And the biggest thing with us is we partner with a lot of key people. And one of them is a hemp seed company out of China that supplies, I think this last year, they supplied 450,000 pounds of hemp seed to numerous farmers across the United States. So their American-based side is here looking to grow here in Hawaii to create a new genetics of seed that will be coming out of Hawaii. So we're currently going to start planting that seed base next week. They're flying in this week. And then it's going to be 4 acres worth. And we're going through the process with HARC, Hawaii Agricultural Research Center, to help us document everything that needs to be done to classify this as a new strain of seed. But all the fiber comes to my fiber farmers after they collect their seed. And right now I have 3 licensed. I'm the 4th guy with the USDA license that are farming hemp on my farm, and one of them came from Montana, and we are currently right now mixing hempcrete with some herd that we've had from previous grows. So we have samples being created of hempcrete blocks and walls. We have hemp paper that we're making ourselves right now. So I have a couple samples that are out there. We do have some hemp plastic products that we got from a friend in California that uses a 3D printer to take the hemp and make sporks and lunch trays. So we're looking at those things. And then we also, the easy thing that our farmer from Montana brought here was a lot of the livestock straw feed, the bedding and whatnot. So we're clearing 100 acres currently right now to grow hemp in the back, because when we first got into this farming, it was all about the soil. Phytoremediation of Dole agriculture lands with all the chemicals in there that the state took over. Our goal is, if we're going to grow food for the state and our community, we need to clean the soils because we don't want that stuff getting into the food. So hemp was the most inexpensive form of phytoremediating the soil and the most proven to take out the heavy metals. So that's why we got into hemp. And we also took soil samples of all of our lands before we started growing, and before we're going to start growing. So that was the key factor in utilizing hemp. And then we take that product, a lot of it retains some of the heavy metals as we were told. So a lot of that goes to our fuel. So we do have about 20 gallons of hemp diesel on the farm. I just haven't found any diesel machines that I want to put it in to test it yet, because they're about $50,000 machines. But I know one of our farmers did test it on an old diesel generator, and it works. And then so our partnership also goes to Kauai and Hawaii Island and Maui with hemp farmers that we're talking to. So Kauai is our biggest thing right now. We put in for 1,000 acres of ADC land there to grow hemp, food, orchard, and livestock mix. And I know a lot of people are talking about the state and, you know, whatever regulations. I do currently have a license agreement to grow industrial hemp, like I said, on 40% of my land, and that's with a state agency. And they're pretty good about it, because somebody else on another farm tried to grow hemp on their land, and they shut them down because it wasn't in their license agreement or farm plan in the beginning to grow hemp. I'm the only guy that has the license or legality to grow hemp on ADC lands currently. So anyway, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I don't want to go into anything else, but that's us and what we're doing on hemp fiber right now.
Thank you, Scotty. Does anyone have any feedback? So he's doing lots of cool stuff over there on Oahu, and then working with some of the outer islands as well. So he's doing some pretty amazing stuff. Does anyone have any feedback or questions or anything?
Well, I just want to say I'm really glad to meet you, Scotty, because I want to continue building hemp houses and not have to buy my herd from Montana. And so I'm really interested. You say that you actually have made some hempcrete over there, huh? And are you decorticating it? You have a decorticator?
Yeah, so one thing I left out is everybody talks about how expensive labor is and stuff, and I go, and it is, but I growing Asian vegetables, I have an army of Chinese farmers, and so I showed the Chinese the hemp, and they laughed because they go, yeah, we've grown this since we were little kids. Growing up, my clothes was made out of hemp, and they don't want to touch hemp anymore because they have thousands and thousands of acres of hemp in China. But these guys can grow, and they actually took 2 acres of the property and laid the irrigation by hand, and they laid the seeds all by hand, and it cost me a case of beer and fill up their tractor with diesel. And the decortication comes from our partners in China. I can't afford a lot of like the hemp train we're looking at all these different machines. But you know, I went to what I could afford, and that was from China. So we got some decorticating machines from our partners. And my hemp farmer from Montana is like me. We use whatever we can to get the job done. So yeah, so we've got small little decorticating machines that we're doing now, but also on Oahu, there is a guy, he was harvesting, I forget what it called, but we call it elephant grass here. They had about 20 acres of elephant grass, but there's another guy here that helped them harvest it. He actually has a combine here that I think it's about maybe 12 row combine. They have two grain trucks that collect it, and they take it to their baler, circle baler, and it loads in the baler, puts it all in plastic, wrapped in circle bales, and he offered to sell it to me. So if I can get money, or the state wants to give us money, we can buy that for massive grows to help bring those bales now can be decorticated easier. Then we can put it into a bigger machine like the hemp train. If not, we still have the smaller decortitators that can separate into hurd and bast. So yes, we're doing our own.
That's great, Scott.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, now we're gonna have to hop on to, we're gonna go into the building sector with Joe. But Scotty, that was a lot of really great information. And again, we just really appreciate what you guys are doing over there on Oahu. So Joe, do you want to speak?
Also, sorry, one more
Go ahead.
thing. Anybody on Oahu, you can come to my farm, give me a call, email me, or you can check out our Facebook. This is where we post most of our stuff. Friends of Waimanalo, on Facebook, we usually post a lot of pics and growing, and can follow us there. But if you're here on Oahu, come by, jump in. You can mix some hempcrete and do some stuff with us, because we are a workforce development, and we also have training for a lot of people in hemp, the hemp industry already for our workforce development. But stop by, please.
Thank you so much. All right, Joe, you want to go ahead and speak?
Yeah, thanks, Scotty. You know, we've run some workshops here, building little 120 square foot structures that we didn't need permits for, and we've done a couple of them. And so you know that we just completed that first house that we built, and I'm not sure what I can share here, just that I can continue buying the hemp where I buy it from, and hopefully all this. I hope people, if you read that article that came out, there's one sidebar article there by an old member of the House of Representatives. Her name was Cynthia Thielen. And she really she initiated this whole thing in the 90s. And she talks about how EGAY basically squashed it, called it a drug. And if you read that article in the paper, it's very interesting to see how things unfolded. So I'm not sure how we can move on from here, but I'm happy to do whatever I can. When we decided to build this house, the idea was we're going to build a house with hemp to show people that we can do that, and then hopefully all these other things that we're talking about, the farmers and the infrastructure and everything else, you know, can come into place. And I still think it can happen. So I'm going to come over to Oahu just to see your place, because I would love some hands-on. I would love to see what you're growing and everything. So I'll contact you, and happy to be part of this group. Thanks for inviting me. I'm gaining a wealth of information that I didn't have. I'm just a building contractor. Thank you.
Thank you,
Hey,
Joe.
I have a quick question for Joe. Is that okay, Meg? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thanks.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
this is Gail. Hi, Joe. Can you share, I mean, maybe it's not, you can't, but what price point you're looking at per volume or per pound that would make it feasible to purchase from a Hawaii farmer? Then we can begin to like look at some economic models
Price per pound?
or whatever. I guess question is, what are you currently paying?
I'm paying about 70 cents.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got scale. We need more scale. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I do know people that are selling it less. I like the people we deal with. South Bend Industrial Hemp, and I don't know if they're connected to your people there, are they? Scotty?
Yeah, I sent one of my hemp farmers 2 years ago to their open house to go through their whole processing and when they built a hemp little shack and stuff like that. So yeah, we're familiar with Melissa them over there.
Yeah, yeah. Actually,
we were getting hemp fiber herd for 40 cents on per pound, and but that doesn't include the shipping cost.
right.
Your costs right now are 40 cents per pound, Scotty. Is that what you said?
Yes, 40 cents per pound. But the shipping is a whole nother story because
Yeah.
it'll either come from China or come from Canada, from IND hemp and stuff or hemp Alta.
You don't get
So that's your import cost. I thought you were saying you could produce that for that much right now, but that's what you're paying for right now.
Yeah, for us, once we start doing it, it'll be a lot cheaper here. For the herd, we're looking at being competitive, 40 to 45 cents per pound.
Oh, that's outstanding. And I'll hop off, and this has been really wonderful to hear. Just an FYI, it was Hawaii farmers that started the Hawaii Hemp Council in 1990 for sustainability reasons, for building purposes, or right along with Laura Thielen. So Hawaii, going back to the 1800s, has a long history with hemp, but it's farmers that really push things, which is a little bit different than some other states. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And then if we're good with the hemp, because we're getting short on time, we have about 15 minutes left. We're gonna go into the last sector with Jediah, who's the president of Kauai Hemp Co., to speak on the cannabinoid sector.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome. I will try to not take too much time to leave time for Q&A. I'm Jediah McRoberts, president of Kauai Hemp Company. We are a 10-acre certified organic hemp farm with 4,000 square foot state-of-the-art CBD processing facility here on the island of Kauai, out in Koloa. To give like a brief history of our journey, in 2019, we were established and started planting our hemp. Our processing facility came online early 2020. The original intent and business model initially was to be a toll processor and contract manufacturer for local farmers throughout the state, allowing them to be able to ship over their hemp to our facility, and then for us to produce products, cannabinoid products for them. Now with COVID, that's changed things. We had to pivot and change to a model creating our own direct-to-consumer brand. I think also besides COVID, what aided in us pivoting was just not having enough farmers and local businesses using our facility. I think the rules and regulations with Chapter 11-37 made it difficult and cost prohibitive for farmers to not only farm hemp, but also transport their hemp to our facility. Anyway, fast forward the past 3 years, we've been slowly growing our cannabinoid brand, Kauai Hemp Company, as well as picking up a couple different private contracts for local businesses, which has been great. However, we have had quite a bit of difficulties having a competitive disadvantage compared to a lot of the mainland brands due to a couple different factors. One primarily being that this state prohibits us from participating in producing consumables such as gummies or food products, which pretty much makes up 40% of the cannabinoid market right now. And also, it is difficult to compete at a price point with other brands, especially when we are dealing with some bad players who are utilizing, how would I say this fairly, marketing tactics that utilize either Hawaiian names or places when their CBD products aren't actually made or grown in Hawaii. So hopefully working with this task force here, we can push some legislation forward or enforcement to help out the local cannabinoid sector here in the state, because it's difficult, and without any assistance, I'm not sure how much longer us or other CBD manufacturers can continue on.
Okay. Feedback, anyone on that? Because I know this has been a theme that's been going on with a lot of the out of state companies that have lower price points. They're not being as regulated. Does anyone have any additional things they want to add or discuss?
I think some of the products that we're not allowed to manufacturers sell now, we can amend Act 263 without rewriting everything and being combined with marijuana. Like I said before, let's stand up the marijuana program and then give hemp 3 to 5 years on its own. So we can address, I think, some of the concerns Judd said without having to start from scratch. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just make a comment, this is Liam from the Department of Health. I think that anybody who's willing to talk about cannabinoid hemp products and legislature and things going on really needs to apply with the Department of Health and get their permit for processing. And if you're not doing that, then you really should not have a voice in the matter. So if you want to be part of this program in this industry, you really should be following the rules and regulations that have been set up and work with us so we can make a better market for the state and you know, for hemp overall.
Yeah, Liam, I don't know who you're speaking to, if you're speaking to someone in particular, but everyone has a right to say what they feel or think about what needs to happen, you know, that's on this task force. So I'm not.
No, I totally agree with that, Gail. But
I'm not sure what you're saying.
No, I just think that if you're producing or manufacturing or processing hemp, cannabinoid hemp, that you really should be, you know, permitted through the Department of Health. And that's all I'm just saying. I'm not pointing out to anybody at all. So not targeting
Okay, I
anybody.
just wasn't. No, I wasn't sure what you were implying with regard to like folks shouldn't be sharing an opinion that way. But I know like for on our farm, and maybe I took that a little too personally, is we haven't processed anything in several years because we're just afraid we're going to spend our money and be denied. So we're just relying on old product that's been there. And I think that's why Brittany was also asking a lot of these questions. And this was a really good forum to get some of these things clarified, because I think that they too have been hesitant to apply for processing. I mean, I shouldn't speak for Brittany, but because of the concern about having some of these questions not clarified. So thank you.
No, yeah, definitely not, Gail. I'm not targeting anybody. I just want to make sure out there that everybody knows that the Department of Health has heard all the issues and problems that we developed this permitting process, and we worked with Act 263, and we'd really like to work with industry. So totally, that's all I'm trying to say. So
and I will open it up that anyone wants or needs any kind of consulting, or not even consultant, just I'm open to help people get that permit. It's actually not that difficult. If you have any questions, you know, glad to share my mana'o.
Thank you. This is Brittany Neal again. And Gail is correct in that I do fully intend to apply for my processing permit, but have just been really wanting to be hyper vigilant on understanding what is allowed and what is not allowed. So that way I have a full understanding before proceeding. And so, you know, this conversation definitely helps. I think something that I also would like to just, I guess, kind of plant the seed, start the discussion about is the acceptable means by which hemp processing can occur. Again, we're being treated as as like this weird agricultural crop that is limited on how we can process our crops, as opposed to, you know, like there are a lot of other farmers growing vetiver and lavender and lemongrass, and they can use heat, and they can use different hydrocarbons in a closed loop system to process their crops. You know, people making flavor extracts for the food industry, they're allowed to take their agricultural crops and process them. And we're essentially allowed to make ice water concentrate. You know what I mean? Like, we're very limited on how we can even process our crops, unless there's something that I'm not fully understanding. If somebody can elaborate on the different types of methods that are allowed under Department of Health rules, that
I
would be
think
very
that
helpful.
Brittany,
There you go, Greg. Go ahead.
so yeah, that was Brittany, correct? That was asking the question.
Yes.
Some of the restrictions on the types of processing methods that ended up in Act 263, and as a sidebar here, Act 263 is not a standalone product. Act 263 is an amendment to a state statute. So the correct reference is 328G. That's the state statute that everyone should be looking at as the legal authority in the state for cannabinoid processing and cannabinoid sales, both retail and what's prohibited, what's allowed. Act 263 is an amendment to that chapter. So just for clarity, Act 263 is not the be all end all. Act 263 also covers multiple statutes. It covers the DOA statutes as well as 328G. So it didn't start with Act 263 is the point. It started Act 14 in 2020, which created 328G. So that's just some of the terminology that's helpful to understand when we're communicating. But Brittany, to answer your question, last year, Act 263 did amend Chapter 328G that allowed for certain buildings to now be considered to be part of that facility, your processing facility, that you would process your hemp biomass. It's nothing to do with growing. You're moving from the growing sector into the manufacturing sector. So you're making a product out of what you grew or what you purchased from somebody else that grew it. The concern was those structures were as being a manufacturing facility, a facility that you would make any food, similar type of food product, something that you eat, something that you ingest, was that there needs to be other agencies, be it state agency or county agencies, that the infrastructure is there, suitable electricity that's been installed by an electrician properly, that the floors, walls, and ceilings are easily cleanable. These speak to good manufacturing practices that are part of our overall national food safety system. These aren't things that were created or invented specifically to constrain or restrict what a hemp processor can do. Now, in that conversation at the legislature, when industry wanted these exempt buildings, they refer to as 4688 exempt buildings. These are agricultural buildings that were intended to be used to store equipment, farming equipment, and do easy processing. And that term is very broad, meaning like washing cucumbers, not cutting cucumbers, not fermenting them, jarring them, labeling them, and introducing them into the food supply. All of that process is covered under FDA and state authorities. So you got to understand what activity is going on in that building that was being proposed. So in our testimony, we brought up, we have concerns that these buildings weren't built for this type of operation, this hydrocarbon extraction, ethanol extraction, whatever it may be, CO2 extraction. Does it have the right safety equipment installed? DOH doesn't govern that. We're not the experts on that. It's going to be those the county and some state agencies that would be looking into, is this building suitable? Fire would be one, of course. So the compromise was industry proposed, well, what if we don't, if in order to use these 4688 exempt buildings, what if we limited the type of extraction methods to, as you mentioned, effectively kind of like an ice extraction. It's really an ice separation. You're separating the trichome head, right, from it with ice. It's not even extracted yet. You'd have to manually smush it out, smush the cannabinoids out of the trichome after that. And that's where it landed. So that's why that restriction came into place. It was from industry wanting to use 4688 and then saying, please let us do this if we limit our types of extraction methods. The department never had a problem with doing those extraction methods. We just said, if you're going to use CO2, ethanol, volatile solvents, including, anything involving heat, that you're going to the proper state and county agencies to make sure your building is suitable for that. And that was how it landed there. And it made things incredibly complicated because it wasn't prohibited before. And we tried to explain that to industry and the legislature. 4688 buildings were not prohibited. They were never prohibited by DOH law under 38G. We just said that if you want to use whatever building you use, you have to demonstrate that it's suitable and designed properly to do the GMPs, proper electricity, proper safety. You've done your homework. You've gone to the state agency, other state agencies, other county agencies, fire code, and that you've got that building that meets those requirements. And that's why we were always trying to say 4688 is not prohibited, but industry wanted that in there. But then they said, well, these various processing methods, what's going to happen with those? And so they said, we won't do them. We won't use these processing methods. Just let us use anything but heat, anything but volatiles, anything but, CO2, et cetera. So it's a lot to digest. And I don't expect anyone to know this stuff just inherently. We're here to, answer your questions. You can always reach out to us on our website. We have our email address. Always best to send it in writing so we can give you a thoughtful response and that's consistent with what our office has been saying.
And that also, if I'm right, Greg, it allowed for the processing and food hubs. So we wouldn't be excluded from that just because food hubs are propping up all over the state.
Yeah.
And there are often grants available for, if you're working in collaboration with those types of entities.
Correct. So food hubs, again, were never prohibited anyway prior. It was just further clarified that they could be used. The
I think it was
industry. What's that?
Sorry, go ahead, Greg. I was going to say, I know the reason why it was explicitly put in there in conversations with you guys was because we felt, given past history, we really needed to have those types of clarifications. But anyway, that's just history. Thank you.
So the food hubs implies this very generic, extremely broad term. That term is food. So who uses these facilities and who regulates these facilities? And it's not going to be us. It's not going to be the Office of Medical Cannabis or previously the Food and Drug Branch that used to have this authority over cannabinoid hemp. It's going to be the Food Safety Branch. So if these shared food hubs were processing facilities where the small operator can go and process canned jams and chop their heads of lettuce and makes bags of salad, whatever. I'm coming up with examples of conventional foods. You pool your resources. You have these shared food hubs where they would exist. You got to remember, cannabinoids are not approved food ingredients. So the Food Safety Branch is not going to. You got to speak to them, but what we've been told is they're not going to let you commingle a product that is going to introduce these, what would be seen as contaminants, cannabinoids, on the same equipment where you're cutting cucumbers, chopping heads of lettuce, you're going into the facility, making jellies and jams, whatever it is that you're doing in the shared space. So the cannabinoid hemp regulations that we're responsible for regulating, again, we never prohibited food hubs. We always said you have to make sure this shared facility that you want to use is that you're in compliance with the overarching regulator, which is usually the Food Safety Branch, because they're the one that goes in there and makes sure that everyone has the right permit to do what they're doing, meaning they're making their jam correctly or they're cutting their heads of lettuce and making their salads, etc. So this is why there's multiple layers to this. This isn't intended to be overly complicated. This is how it is. This is just how it is. If you're going into someone else's space and it's shared equipment, you have to work with that regulating agency to ensure that you're still not messing up somebody else's deal, so to speak.
If I can just add, and Greg, thank you. It's so fantastic, and I love having you talk about hemp. Just add that we're very open to talking to industry, to individuals, to permittees. And you can talk to anybody who's gotten the permit. We're very open to discussing the process and working with you. We understand that it is difficult and it is a hardship, but we do want this to succeed. So please reach out to us, work with us. There's nothing that we can do without industry, and communication is the high point for us. So that's what I want you guys to come away with from this.
Yeah, and just scale, I found that to be true. You guys are pretty much will respond to emails and phone calls. I think, and I guess I would just ask is, please give us heads up on legislation too, because you guys often know months and months ahead of time when there's something rumbling, and there's no reason why we can't all be on the same page about, trying to tell people why something would or wouldn't work. So thank you.
Real quickly, Judea, you mentioned earlier in your, sorry, Greg again, Department of Health. You mentioned that, or you alluded to that there was, when you, as a tolling operator or at that business model, you felt 1137, which is the cannabinoid regulations, was a barrier to farmers coming to you to move their hemp biomass in or working with you. If it is, please work with us and identify what sections precisely in 1137, because we don't control the transportation. That's under DOA. And we clearly allow a licensed hemp processor, as you are, to purchase and be in receipt of hemp biomass from another USDA farmer. So nothing in 1137 explicitly prevents another farmer from working with you and either loaning you, whatever the right term is, but using your services. If it's a transportation concern, that's not in 1137. That's a transportation under DOA. If there's something else that you can specifically identify in the rules that is a barrier to being a tolling operation, if that's, I think that's what you deemed it.
Yes, correct. So
please identify those to us in writing so we can look at it, so we can see that perspective and be like, all right, what were we trying to achieve here, and what did we inadvertently maybe cause a restriction on?
Right, I think I was alluding to like the intermediary products, right? So a farm comes to us and says, hey, can you process my hemp and then turn it into a distillate or a crude oil? That product is technically over 0.3% and would have to be, turned into a final good product in our facility.
Oh, right. Yeah, it was very vertical. The original rule, the original law was entirely vertical, meaning you got a hold of your hemp biomass and you made the finished product. There was no selling it, intermediary steps, selling that product or having it come into your system at that point. But that's been changed with the recent law. We just have to, for finalizing the rules for that crude element to be allowed.
That'd be great, because we're limited on size here, and some people might want to produce like a bath salt or something like that, and we want to be able to sell their hemp in a distillate form back to them so they can in turn make whatever products that they want. And until those rules change, that's not possible.
Yeah, we can you can certainly reach out to us and we can let you know where we're going with the crude concepts here a little bit. But yeah, appreciate that. Thanks.
No worries.
Okay, that's time. We're a little bit over time. June, did you want to hop in?
Thank you, everyone. So we'll continue, I think, next week. So this is our next step. Our consultants will continue reaching out to all of you. And if you have any, other concerns, you can directly contact her, Megan and Char. And then on June 21st, next Friday, so we will continue this meeting. I think we have a productive meeting today, and we have a lot of things to discuss. So we still have we have scheduled same time for Friday. And then if you wish to, we can invite, I think we can also invite again Mike if you have more questions for him. And then on July 1st, we'll be expecting the report from the Hemp consultants. So they will give us their findings and recommendations to the task force. So with that, thank you again for attending this meeting. And to all the speakers, thank you also. And to all the participants. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, June, for
Thank
doing
you.
this. We appreciate it.